A couple of weeks ago, I figured it was time to sit down and watch 28 Days Later, the widely acclaimed Danny Boyle zombie movie that doesn't actually contain any actual zombies. It turns out, it was great. Alex Garland's script was tight and interesting, and Boyle's cinematography, while a bit overwrought at times, sparkled even decades after the film was released. It did an excellent job making the victims of the rage virus a real threat and explored themes such as man's inhumanity to man. I can see why people still love that movie even so many decades later. So why stop there, I asked myself. Earlier this week, and 18 years after it came out, I finally watched 28 Weeks Later. And let me tell you, this movie has some of the dumbest characters in the history of cinema. Everyone involved is stupid, from the people who decided to start resettling England mere weeks after a virus outbreak wiped out every living soul in the country, to the people who decided it was a good idea to go back and live there mere weeks after a virus outbreak wiped out every living soul in the country. The opening scene introduces us to Don and his wife Alice, who, along with some other people who do not matter, are hiding out in a cottage during the rage virus times in Great Britain. The windows are boarded up, they're using candles for light and a wood-burning stove for cooking, and are being quiet, so as not to attract the attention of the rage virus mobs that are roaming the land. Everything's great so far. These are intelligent people who will surely outlast this disaster, right? And then we get the one time in this film where people behave in an understandably stupid way. Someone starts banging on the front door, and it's immediately apparent that there's a boy out there, desperate to get in. Now, it's true that they do let him in, and the zombie horde does almost immediately break into the home and murder most everyone in it, but are these two events directly correlated? There is some amount of time between bringing the boy inside before the zombies also get inside. And what is the actual act that immediately results in the zombies getting in? Teenage girl, whose name I don't remember, and the movie likely never tells us, opening a crack in the wall to see if she can spot her boyfriend out there in the wasteland. That's when the zombies bust into the house and chaos reigns. I'm fairly sure that yes, the horde was chasing the boy, but he got inside with enough lead time to where the horde wasn't sure where he was. If they'd remained inside, quiet, the zombies would have moved on. Being unable to tell there was anybody actually alive inside that house, teenage girl doomed them all. It wasn't their compassion for the child who was alone and running scared. So, we start the movie with one fine decision and then immediately go to a bad one, and the hits just keep coming, one after another. Dawn's decision to abandon Alice after she refused to leave the boy she met 3 minutes ago is also purely about survival, though it also sort of doomed humanity in the end. This is a complicated movie. Anyway, after this excellently shot scene with a harrowing score, we finally get to Camp Idiots, where the Americans have come to England to see what all the fuss was about, discovered the rage virus problem, and tried to clean it up. It's a spot-on bit of world building here, as yeah, it probably would be the Americans who try to help rebuild England after a disaster wiped out the entire population. However, let's give it more than 28 weeks, yeah? I appreciate that you understand that outside of your little compound it's still dangerous, so maybe spend a year or two entirely clearing the island before you let people come back? And for heaven's sake, British people, I understand the appeal of going home. Really, I do. But 28 weeks after your entire nation was wiped out by something we still don't understand, you're traipsing back here by the thousands? It's realistic, because I'm sure there are thousands of real-world people who would do this. But it still boggles my mind. And here, we're introduced to Tammy, who dooms the entire human race, and Andy, whose genetic abnormality allows her to do it. These two are dummies of the highest order, but they're kids, so it makes sense. Are you noticing a theme here? People in this movie are stupid, but believably so. I'm not sure this film deserves the outright negative reputation that it has. Anyway, in short, Tammy's decision to leave the safe zone and go home again dooms humanity. The military's inability to stop them from leaving the compound dooms humanity. Mom's immunity to the virus because of her heterochromia, ? And her finding her way back to her home dooms humanity. Dawn somehow having full access to everything in the building despite being a maintenance man and deciding to see his carrier wife and then making out with her dooms humanity. Tammy killing zombie Dawn as he's about to finish off Andy dooms humanity. Helicopter pilot Harold Perrineau trusting Dr. Scarlet's belief that Andy can save humanity dooms humanity. The whole movie is just bad decisions and incompetent moves, one after another, that all lead to a kid who doesn't exhibit symptoms of the rage virus, but is a carrier for it, being allowed to leave Great Britain and go to the continent. And the next thing you know, the virus is in France, and everyone is done for. So, I was annoyed while watching this movie, but the more I think about it, the more I feel it's a realistic portrayal of what would happen if this rage virus existed and had destroyed all of Great Britain. The Americans would come in and would mess it up to the point that the virus escaped and continued its rampage across all of Europe, Asia, and Africa. And sure, if they figured out that blood screening for people who are carriers would prevent the spread, and every single boat and plane that headed for the New World was thoroughly checked and screened, maybe they could keep the virus from getting across the oceans, but that's unlikely. The world is doomed. North America, South America, Europe, Asia, Africa. Oh, there's Australia, which we need to talk about too. New Zealand, right? Yeah, it seems like the oceans protect you from these zombies, but if we're not actively screening for these carriers, these people with heterochromia, everyone's toast. So after this, I assume the world is doomed. But of course, I haven't seen 28 years later yet, but I do plan on doing that for my next review. In short, I don't think 28 weeks is as bad as everyone says it is. Idris Elba gives a pretty good performance as military guy in charge, and Jeremy Renner's playing Jeremy Renner, as always, this time as a sniper with a heart of gold. There's fine casting, there's good pacing, a pretty excellent soundtrack, and while it is missing Boyle's visual flair, the cinematography really isn't that bad. So in the end, I give 28 weeks later a 6 out of 10, and we're going to move on to 28 years later for the next one. Thanks for watching, and as always, you take care of yourself.